There are more signs today that suggest that former Vice President Mike Pence will inevitably, eventually testify before a federal grand jury about his old boss's efforts to overturn the 2020 election result. A senior law enforcement official confirms to NBC News that special counsel Jack Smith has already preemptively asked a federal judge to force Pence to appear before that grand jury before he's even had a chance to argue against his subpoena in court. It comes as one of the most conservative former judges to have once advised Mike Pence personally warns that any fight against his subpoena would be a, quote, dangerous gambit, and says that Pence, quote, doesn't have a chance in the world of winning his case in any federal court and avoiding testifying before the grand jury. Let's bring in former RNC chair and MSNBC political analyst Michael Steele. Harry Litman is back with us at the table. He's a former U.S. attorney, former deputy assistant attorney general. We may move you into the studio from till the end of time. I want to start with you, though, Michael Steele. I mean, Judge Ludig, if you had put it on a bingo card that Judge Ludig would become the voice of reason in sort of the Pence legal calculations, he was the one who gave Pence some of the legal analysis that said, no, you cannot overturn President Joe Biden's victory. This is a formal certification. And he is now extending that role as counselor, if you will, to Mike Pence to say you will not prevail in fighting this subpoena.
Yeah, when you're beholden to the Constitution and not some guy in Mar-a-Lago, that's the kind of advice you get. It's sound, solid, constitutionally based, looking at the fact pattern and understanding what the reality is for someone like Mike Pence, who was at the fulcrum of this. He's a central player in this narrative. And so this idea that somehow you're going to be less offensive to Donald Trump by trying to wiggle in one direction puts you at odds with everything else, the Constitution, the fact pattern, the rule of law, all those other things that you espouse, presumably, as someone who wants to be the next president of the United States. So the reality is a hard one here for the vice president. He's getting good advice. The test for all of these folks, whether you're talking about Mike Pence or any of the others who are having their sights set on the Oval Office, is just how far are you willing to go to tell the truth to the American people versus your own political ambitions. And this, we'll see whether or not he gets to pass that test.
And, you know, Michael Steele, I'll let Harry weigh in on this next. I have a sense of what he would say. But I think we've spent 6 years hearing that prosecutors block everything out. I think the 6 years have proven that that's not true. And it is a different thing to be partisan than it is to be political. Bill Barr was political and partisan. Merrick Garland is not partisan, but he's extremely political. And he appears from the outside, and history may prove me wrong, I hope it does, to have some paralysis around these politically charged probes. I wonder what you think the impact is of an iconic conservative legal figure like Judge Ludig weighing in and basically just laughing at the Pence legal movements.
Well, it's actually a clarifying moment from where I'm sitting, because at a certain point in this process, I think all of us sort of scratch our head and go, is it just me? Am I the only one?
Oh, my friend, I feel like that every day. Pull my hair out.
Am I the only one who don't? I'm actually reading the words, and yet somehow I seem to be out of step with everybody else. And so Judge Ludig is very clarifying in this moment. To your point about the Attorney General, yes, he's paralyzed by the politics here. What I would say to him is you're actually freed from the politics. Yeah, this is the first time you've had to, consider bringing charges against a former president or invoking or requesting the vice president to appear and testify. Yeah, all these things are new because we've never been here before. We've never had a president who tried to overthrow the government. We've never had a vice president whose life was threatened by his president before. So, yeah, it's not just me. It's you, boo, who don't get it.
Yeah, and I mean, and I'll let you take all the time you need, Harry. But the thing is, we saw with Mueller all this deference. Actually, Mueller was so deferential to Pence, he never calls him in. We saw this because there's such institutionalism inside DOJ that doing anything differently than what DOJ has done before is so jarring to these DOJ institutionalists. But as Michael Steele's saying, we're not the variable, those of us on Earth One. Trump, a criminal, corrupt leader who brazenly sought to plot a coup against the government he ostensibly led, that's the variable.
Yeah. And, Mueller was very old school and patrician this way. Jack Smith, I think, has been the opposite, including the kinds of aggressive moves. Now we've got Pence, Meadows, Ivanka, and Jared recently. Mm-hmm. As Ludig says, the last sort of iconic moment with Pence was what Ludig calls a profile in courage of standing up. And I was less impressed than others that he actually just followed the law. But nevertheless, that's...
He didn't break the law, but it counts as heroic.
That's the indelible Pence moment for now. What he's asserting is, and this is to the, nearly silly, even though the law is unsettled, nevertheless, I think we can all sort of guffaw at it, that in these conversations with Trump, which is what Smith is really looking to get, he was somehow in his guise as the president of the Senate.
I bet you $1 million Trump has no idea that an American vice president
is even the president.
I bet you
right?
Trump has no idea that's even a thing.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the standard for bringing claims, but I think you're right. But look, it's A, silly, but B, it's so contrived, and that he combines it with this pious statement as if it's a weighty constitutional principle, and he's just standing up for separation of powers, and it is going to be shot down. Now, I think it's actually calculated to have a little bit more delay, because we've talked about this before, more open-ended. Of course, I've talked less about speech or debate, but it's, Ludig says short work of it, maybe it's medium work of it, but it can't succeed, because the general test was, is that a legislative act? When he's getting, completely...
he's being called the P word?
For example. I don't think that's a legislative... He's not the P word in the sense of president of the Senate then. And, so it's got to fail. And he's going to look contrived about it. And I think, Michael, his suggestion that the motivation here is not even to be an inch away from trying to fight for Trump, because his only path to the presidency, far-fetched as it may be, has to do with garnering those 30 or whatever, slightly dwindling, we hope, percentage of Trump supporters. But the legal claim is lousy, but conjoined with this, Mike Pence piety is, I think, really a bad look, and one that is going to sully the January 6th, reputation he received.